Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. My mock draft was supposed to be coming out right now when I'm recording this video. You still might see that later tonight, but instead we have a huge trade, one that has been rumored for a while. Jerami Grant is getting traded to the Portland Trailblazers, and there's been a lot of talk about this. Everyone's thinking, oh, Portland's going to use pick 7 to trade for a win-now player, and Jerami Grant had been the name that was thrown around the most, so it's not that surprising that Jerami Grant is going to Portland, and I really do think it makes a lot of sense, but we'll get into that in a second. What we really need to talk about first of all, though, is, like I said, the rumor was pick 7 for the Portland Trailblazers. They were going to use that to trade for a win-now player like a Jerami Grant. And I've been pretty vocal on both Twitter and this channel that I don't think that's a good idea. I think pick 7 is way more valuable than a piece like Jerami Grant, who I kind of see as like a third option on a championship team. I don't really see him as being worth trading the 7th overall pick in the draft, which could be huge for Portland and is by far their most valuable asset outside of like Dame or Anthony Simons. But the Blazers didn't give up number 7. They gave up a Bucks pick in 2025, which is probably going to be one of the worst picks because the Bucks have Giannis, and like a second round pick swap this year, a couple seconds in the future. So they gave up like a pick swap in the second round this year, 2 second round picks, and a first round pick that's going to be bogus for Jerami Grant. It was a great deal for the Portland Trailblazers. It makes a ton of sense. Jerami Grant fits a need for them. They really needed a 3/4, and now they've got a starting lineup of Dame, Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, Jerami Grant, and Jusuf Nurkic. That's a really good starting 5. And while I still think they do have a lot to catch up on in the Western Conference, I still think there's about 7 or 8 teams that are better than them at this moment out there in the West. They've made some headway. Picking up a guy like Jerami Grant, he can go a long way to helping this team. If maybe now they can find a way to maybe package pick 7, some other pieces, and trade for another like star caliber player, something's kind of building there in Portland. So I think this is a really good start for them. And the fact that they kept pick 7 is huge. I really thought to get Jerami Grant, they were going to have to give up that pick. And if they did, it was going to be a huge mistake in my opinion. Because at pick 7, you can get a cheap young piece that you can either flip later down the line, or pick 7, you get to the draft, you've got teams maybe wanting to trade up, so you can trade down, get some more assets, then maybe trade that pick. There's so many ways to go about trading pick 7 that are better than a guy like Jerami Grant. So I think it makes a ton of sense. I really like this move for Portland. Jerami Grant, I think he's really good, but to me, he's not really a first or a second option. Maybe a second option, depending on the caliber of the players around him on a championship team. But I've never seen him as really a first option in Detroit. He was pretty good, but he was kind of inefficient, and of course, they didn't really go many places. I see him more as like a solid or really good third option on a championship team, and now he's got the chance to be that second/third option, depending on if they trade for someone else, if Anthony Simons continues to blossom over there in Portland. He plays defense, which they desperately need. He can hit threes. He can create his own shot, which is another thing that the Trailblazers need, and he's good defensively, like I said, which works well next to Josh Hart and Jusuf Nurkic, and now forms a pretty solid defensive front court there in Portland. So they've got a lot going. I do think they still kind of need a bench as well. Not a lot of great names off of that bench that are going to help them immediately, so they've got to go out and get some more help there. But I do think this is a pretty good start for a Portland team that I wouldn't be surprised if they're active again before the end of Thursday's draft, which, by the way, I'm going to be live streaming. I've said it a couple times on this channel, but in case you missed it, I'm going to be live streaming starting about 15 minutes before the draft, so make sure to check out that. The live stream will come up at some point tomorrow. Just make sure to tune on in. And like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and also if you don't want to miss out on that. On the Pistons side of things, it's also really interesting because for a while it kind of seems like their asking price was like pretty high for Jerami Grant. A lot of people thought it was like a first round pick and a player. It was maybe just a pick and like a salary filler or something like that. But because Portland had cap space, they didn't have to take any players back. And now, while Detroit, sure, they didn't get the picks that we thought they might get. They didn't even get like one of Portland's picks. They got a Bucks pick who have Giannis. It's not going to be a good pick. They did, however, get us a couple second rounders in the future, so those could be decent picks. But all in all, the haul from Jerami Grant himself, it's not a great haul in terms of a player who has kind of been a borderline all-star for the past season or so. It's not great. However, when you look at what they've brought back now, in addition to what they did by getting rid of Jerami Grant, it makes a lot more sense. The Pistons, now that they've traded Jerami Grant and brought in no salary in return, have $56 million in cap space. And you might be saying, like, okay, like, what are they going to go get? Kyrie, Bradley Beal, James Harden? No, I don't think so. Instead, DeAndre Ayton. There's been a report that just came out from James Edwards, as well as just kind of something that kind of seems apparent. DeAndre Ayton makes a lot of sense for the Pistons to go after in restricted free agency. And by trading Jerami Grant's $20-some million, they've cleared up so much space for not just him, but they could theoretically bring in 2 restricted free agents if they wanted to. Other names like a Miles Bridges, for example, who the Hornets have reportedly been kind of hesitant to offer him a max contract. If the Pistons think that, hey, we bring in Miles Bridges and DeAndre Ayton, we just offer them deals, just throw them the bag, worst case, the other team matches, and we just bring in some other guys using this salary space, that makes a lot of sense. When you trade Jerami Grant, you bring in nothing in return, you end up making this situation where at worst you just have cap space, which is never a bad thing to have in the NBA. And at best, maybe you bring in one or both of those restricted free agents. And if you could bring in either of those players, they would be huge for this team because you still have pick number 5. Maybe you could even try and package the picks that you got in this trade alongside pick 5 and another player to try and move up to 4, swap with the Kings so that you could get like a Jaden Ivey or something. There's a lot of possibilities. While I don't love the initial return on Jerami Grant, there's a lot of possibilities that open up because of the move. If they're able to get Miles Bridges, that's huge. He's such a great piece for them. He gives them another scoring wing, someone who just was in most improved player conversations, he's a shooter, he can create his own shot, he's a great slasher. Him and Cade Cunningham would be a really fun duo, and I also believe that Miles Bridges is from Flint, Michigan, or around that area, so that's another story. It could be a homecoming for him. And then you've got DeAndre Ayton, who really the only thing the Pistons really need, they need a center. I like Isaiah Stewart a lot, but to me, I think he's more of a backup center. He's a little undersized. If they could bring in DeAndre Ayton and pair him with Cade Cunningham and whoever they get at 5 or 4 if they trade up, you've got one of the best young big duos, trios in the league. You also add in Sadiq Bey, and if you're able to bring in both of those guys, the Pistons very quickly go from, oh, they're in their rebuild, to, oh, here they come. Like, things can shift very quickly now for the Pistons. So I like what they did a lot. I think they made some really good moves, getting rid of Jerami Grant's contract. Like I said, I don't love the return just in terms of assets, but if they're able to execute down the stretch of this offseason, we could look back and this could have been a huge win-win for both sides. I love it for Portland. I think it makes sense to get Jerami Grant, especially on such a cheap deal. I'm still kind of in the camp that I don't know how they're going to be able to contend with Dame, but who knows? This maybe is just the first of a few moves. They've still got 7 as an asset, as well as some other young pieces. So all in all, I think it's a pretty solid trade for both sides. Let me know what y'all think about this trade in the comment section below, as always. You might see a few more of these videos before the draft. There is a lot going on in the league. Let me check my phone real quick and make sure nothing else has happened. No, we're good. Okay, so just had to make sure there were no more trades. But just in case, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss out on any trade coverage. Every time a trade drops, I will record a reaction as soon as I can, so don't miss out on that. But for right now, let me know what you grade the trade in the comment section below. You'll probably see a mock draft either later tonight or tomorrow, so you don't miss out on that either. Make sure to look out for that one. Also, check out the live stream tomorrow, right before the draft, and pretty much the whole duration of the thing. We'll see how far we go. But all in all, I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.